is not a drill, this is not a drill. All warriors mount up. Proceed to nav point Gamma. Rendezvous with Mobile HQ for tactical and situational analysis. Welcome to the MHQ Podcast.
Hello everybody and welcome. This is our 12th podcast, and today we have a special guest, Craig A. Reed, Jr., who is an author of a lot of different BattleTech short stories and novels. Most recently, I believe, hold on, let me double check here. I want to make sure I give you the correct credit, because I just picked up from Kindle, and I want to make sure I don't mess it up. Okay, let's see. Elements of Treason, Honor, Duty, and Opportunity are the most recent three that I'm picking up, and I'm going to read on my vacation next week. With me is Ronald Baker, Randall Snyder, and Bradley Prophet will be chiming in with questions. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Randall and Ron to take it over, and I'm going to mute myself. Take it away, guys.
So, hey, Craig, welcome to the podcast. I'd like to do quick little introductions if you'd like. Tell us about yourself.
That's a question. I've been writing for BattleTech for the last dozen years or so. But my first foray was back in the dark ages with BattleTechnology.
Yeah, that was back in the 90s, wasn't it?
Yeah. Me and a friend of mine, Rob Madson, who's no longer with us, both big BattleTech fans at the time. And we put together the Suburban Mech, and we sent that in. That appeared in issue 16. And then in issue 21, we sent them a whole bunch of stuff. We sent them a story, we sent them the Rattlesnake BattleMech, and we sent them a scenario. And that was in the last issue ever published.
So that's all the way back to the Stone Age, the dark ages of the inner sphere.
In the late 90s, I kind of fell out with BattleTech. Unfortunately, Rob fell out. He went full into model railroading. And, I didn't really come back into things until the 2000s. And then I saw I heard about Battle Corps. And I decided to try to write for that. And show you how long ago it was, I was sending in hard copies of the story.
Yeah, I do remember reading about that. Something was happening. What? Tell us about what was happening about the hard copies.
I sent at least 2-3 different copies of the first story in, and somehow they never made it in. So it wasn't until Jason Smytzer took over there that he opened it up to electronic submissions. And I submitted my first story, which was The Lance Killer. And it got published, and it went from there.
Nice. So, what's your latest book? I know you've been kind of doing the rounds and trying to, spread the word of not the word of Blake, but So, what's your current story about? First of all, what's the title, and when is it going to be released?
The current novel will be out in July, until July 15th, and it will be the featured new fiction at Gen Con. It's called In the Shadow of the Dragon, and it takes place on Luthian. And the basic story starts out as a murder mystery. Both civilians guidance corps detectives investigating a body found in an alley. Excuse me. And from there, they find themselves in the next in political intrigue.
So is this kind of following like a normal person or an investigator, or is this more focused on like MechWarrior type characters?
Well, the main character is a CGT, Civilian Guidance Corps detective.
Okay,
But
it's a little bit
there's
different
also-
than most of them.
But there is BattleMech action in there.
It wouldn't be BattleTech without it.
Yeah. I've been told that if I'm writing a novel, I better have some BattleMech action in it. So there is. So the woman who's died has connections to the palace because her sister works there as one of the coordinator Yuri Kurita's personal physicians. And because of that, Yuri gets involved. And from there, after a few things happen, Yuri decides to reactivate a little used office under the coordinator called the Office of Special Investigation. And basically what it is, it's an office for those times which coordinator wants something if you don't want to go through the ISF. So it's not an active office, then it's closed down again. Which is why it's never
so it's sort of like when you're investigating a high political office type thing, and you don't want to.
Yeah.
You can't trust the political establishment type of situation. Gotcha.
So
what was your inspiration for writing this? I don't mean to cut you off. Just
it just came to me. It just started out and just kept going. I kept writing, and by the end, I had this novel.
all right.
And I basically done it in the dark. A lot of the Bill Clan novels that you see out now weren't.
What do you mean by that?
I didn't know anything about them. Out of the Wolf hadn't come out. Bringing the Damocles Sanction hadn't come out. A lot of those novels right in there, I was basically writing blind. So I said to John, hey, I've got this novel, do you think you can use it? And I sent it to him, and he said, yeah. It took us about a year to rewrite it to reflect different things, like I had to move it back a year, to actually make it a year earlier than what I originally intended. Pushed it into the Dark Age era, right before the Wolf Terror.
So you wrote this completely independent of the current storyline. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes.
Initially, anyway?
Yes, it was initially. And then, well, I do that sometimes. I have this idea, I go full bore with it, and all right, that's what I did with Vengeance Games. That was not commissioned. That was just me taking an idea and running with it.
But how did that work out for you though? So like, my assumption has always been that you would, I guess, Catalyst, for example, would be reaching out to authors and saying, hey, we've got this gap here that we need you to fill. And I figured they would kind of give you some feed or guidance. But in your case, it was completely different.
Most of the time, they do. Icons of War, which was my first novel, was John saying, hey, how would you like to write this story about the, I guess you'd call it theft of the McKenna's Pride.
Awesome book, by the way. I love that.
When he asked me how many words you think it'd be, I said 20,000. I did not realize that was a mistake until I really looked into it and realized that I couldn't steal the McKenna's Pride until after the War of Reaving. So I had to figure out, okay, how do I get this team into clan space and keep them there? Because I realized early on that Vlad was not going to send a team during Jihad a year into a year's journey into hostile territory. So I said, okay, that means they got to be there from the beginning. And the original.
That's an interesting point. So, like, one of the complaints I have of watching a lot of TV shows is passage of time is never really paid attention to, and a lot of logistics are not paid attention. But it sounds like you actually did go, okay, well, how many jumps is it going to take to get from point A to point B, and what timeline is it going to require?
Yeah.
Is that kind of common for you to go into that level of detail?
You have to, because you have to stay consistent. Like you said, Vlad's not going to waste a jump ship or troops, in 30, 74, 75, go on what is basically a suicide mission. I figured that, if he's going to take Alexander Kerensky's body, he's going to take everything at once. He's going to grab everything, the Homeland Word clans a finger, and leave, and never come back. So that was the original plan, that they were supposed to steal Alexander Kerensky's body along with the other Kerensky's legacies. Only they had some problems, and it took them another 5 or 6 years to set up the next plan.
So is that kind of like inspired by the Odyssey with Odysseus's travels back to Greece?
No, because they're basically stuck on Star Mechny for the entire time. So they were kind of sitting there doing nothing. Except...
Sorry about the interruption, but wasn't that a mistake where there was a reference where this guy disappeared for so long and that's why he disappeared? Was to get the...
Eric Kerensky, who was a Sovka at the time, Anastasia Kerensky became Sovkan, and there was no explanation of why Garrett had disappeared.
Right.
It came up in one of the Rise conferences. I think it was at Gen Con a couple years ago. How much he says that's because Garrett was going to go get the Kenneth's Pride.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of a neat little story background behind how it kind of got to be that way.
They need someone to write a story of how the Kenneth's Pride ended up in the spear. So I took Elemental, Norman Kerensky, and waved this story that the operation that Vlad Ward had for the removal of the blood legacies a lot more complex than what sourcebooks said. So the original intention was that they would take all the blood legacies out, except for the Kerenskys and Winstons, get all the wolves out, and then leave a group behind to monitor the situation, and when the time came to grab Alexander Kerensky's body and take off with the Kerensky legacies, all in one shot, and then they wouldn't have to worry about going back.
Okay.
As I said, the Kenneth's Pride was around until 76. So the plan went wrong, and the Garmin Kerensky had to improvise.
So, what was the most challenging aspect of writing this book? Like, what this book in particular? Like, what kind of
deepening clan society? Because you had basically, anytime you've seen clans, it's been the warrior class, warrior case. And you see very little of the man on the street. And in one of the resource books, there was mention of free guilds that were used by the different clans. They didn't belong to any particular clan, but they kind of operated independently, were hired by different clans for different things. So I took that, I added in some dark case action, and kind of mixed it up. And there was the result was that at Santika and the winter orphans.
Okay, so where did you get the inspiration for their culture? Is there anything from like real world, or is this more?
No, that I had this reference to the free guilds, so I built on that and expanded it out and made them basically like the underclass. These are the jobs that the clans don't want to handle or don't have the resources to handle. For example, if they want a shipment to this outpost and they don't want to waste their own material, they'll hire a free guild to ship the supplies out to that outpost. If they need extra text for something, they'll call in a free guild or two. They'll have some text, and then after that, texts are released, and away they go.
Okay, it's kind of like contractors, but not quite.
Contractors. They do a lot of the cleaning, a lot of the grunt work. For one reason or the other, the clans members will not do themselves. And that's why probably describe is a little bit like in Japanese society, the Edda, I think it is.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, basically they do everything that normal Japanese citizens wouldn't do. The butchers, who handle the, really icky jobs.
Yeah, if I remember right, the Edda were kind of the untouchable caste, where because they handled all the disgusting things, the sewer workers, the butchers, the people who handled dead bodies and things. The upper class would literally not touch them.
Yeah. And then it was just easy to make some of the free guilds fronts for dark case crime gangs. Like I said, the Antigua and the winter orphans. They operate in the shadows behind their guild, their free guild, and it's an organized crime gang basically. They maybe not as extreme as say some of the ones you find in a spear, but what they do basically is crime.
Right.
Or
so
nice
triads
crime.
Or Yakuza type thing.
Yeah. So they operate in the shadows and basically out of sight of the Iban, Kashyyyk, and the Katusha City, Kashyyyk, which was another thing I had fun with, playing around with them, getting a look at them at some detail, which was fun.
You really gotten deep into the lore, even just in this little conversation. You're like way deeper than I've ever dug into it. So, do you still play the game?
And I can. Unfortunately, I'm in an area that doesn't have too many BattleTech friends. I would have to go down to Fort Myers, and that's a bit of a haul for me because I'm up here in Port Charlotte.
Oh, there's a Sarasota group that's pretty active. Bradley's been going down to Sarasota.
Yeah, but the thing is, I'm right in that area where it's like 40 miles one way, 40 miles the other way.
Right. I'm kind of the opposite side. I'm up in the Spring Hill area, so for me to get down to Tampa, it takes about an hour to get there.
Yeah.
So when you get a chance to play, what's your favorite format?
BattleTech. I played Alpha Strike before, and they lose a little bit of the crunch. I mean, I like the idea of instead of rolling one time and getting that much damage, rolling individually for each damage point, because I feel that's a little more, well, not really, it's a little more close to BattleTech.
Yeah, that definitely feels better, like much more like Classic.
Mm.
Pretty much every group that I've been in, we always introduce people with the single roll max damage standard rolls, and then introduce them to the multiple rolls per point of damage, and everybody's like, "Oh, this feels so much better."
Yeah. I play mostly Classic. I did, in the 80s and 90s. I was part of a wargaming group up where I lived in Maryland, and we would play probably once a month. We didn't play with too many stock mechs. We usually played with customs out the wazoo.
Right. Did you guys get into any experimental type stuff, like things that were house ruled equipment?
Well, let's see. No, we basically played BattleTech. I mean, we used the movement dice. We got using them back before they were official. And, but we basically played vanilla BattleTech for the most part.
Okay.
We did have the one rule that if you took multiple hits for piling rolls, one piling roll with all the modifiers thrown in, rather than having to roll. If you had 3 hits and forced you piling rolls, in our game, you just rolled this once with all the modifiers added in, as opposed to rolling 3 different times to determine piling rolls. So, like I said,
yeah, it's been a while since I've gotten into Classic. That's one of the things.
Yeah.
Last time I played Classic, my Stormcrow got his leg blown off by double AC-20s to the leg, and he was face down in the dirt the entire rest of the match.
Yeah. That's the one difference between BattleTech and Alpha Strike. Alpha Strike's good.
Yeah.
I'm not going to discount it, but I don't play it that often. But it allows you to have these huge games and have it resolved in less than 4 months.
Yeah.
But
I think Brad's did. Ron and Brad. What was the size that you guys just played?
2,500 PV.
And that was what, 40 units or something on a side?
Roughly, yeah. I had a supernova, so I had a trinary of mechs and a trinary of elementals, yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine leaving that on the board
Not for
months.
yeah,
And then having the cat knock everything over in the middle of the night.
yeah, that would be disastrous. But
Craig, do you have some time for some listener/viewer questions real fast?
sure.
We got a question from one of our listeners. He was wondering if you can tell us, do you know if there's any more stories planned out for the Tamar area, basically around Brewer and the Tomar pack?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
But I'm working up a couple of novel proposals for one is sequel to Honor, and the other one's the sequel to Shadow of the Dragon. I'm still thinking about the other two.
All right. Yeah, I really enjoyed. You actually made me pull for Brewer, which was kind of shocking. I really like that one.
I like being able to deepen Brewer because, as I said before, in BattleTech there's no such thing as a character's all white or all black.
Correct.
All shades of gray. And Brewer, for the most part, has been this ambitious, ruthless guy who somehow manages to win.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was doing the research, I noticed there's no mention of him being married at any time. And the woman's acting as hostess on Hesperus is his niece. Not his wife, not his daughter, there's no indication that he's married. So I was thinking, what happened if, when he was younger, he did a tour of some of the major planets in Commonwealth, and one of the stops was on Melissa. So I figured, okay, what happens if he fell in love? Melissa, for some one reason or another, that shouldn't happen. So I had to come to Melissa and come face to face with a daughter he never knew he had. And the idea was to, well, humanize him may sound a little hokey, but it makes you wonder what happened if he had married this woman, which he was the mother of his child, and how different his life would have been.
What book is that in?
Elements of Treason Opportunity.
So what's your favorite faction to play or represent or write about?
I'm a Fed Sons type of guy, but as a writer, I have to write for everyone. I have to make them at least understandable, if not sympathetic.
Right. So what is it that drew you to the Fed Sons?
Well, basically, they're the good guys. They're the knights in shining armor. Right,
but like you mentioned, there's always shades of gray. So what's the kind of shadiest part of the Fed Sons that you've enjoyed?
The shadiest parts are the fact that the two March Lords, now three March Lords, don't exactly see eye to eye when you have one at times. They tend to do things on their own, without consulting with the First Prince. But I have to be comfortable writing for every faction in order to make them, if not sympathetic, at least make them someone you want to see what happens to.
Yeah, and just be plausible and kind of realistic, have realistic motivations.
That's why I had written a couple stories about a Comstock Presenter who's a man I dominate, Gazelle. Written a couple stories about him. Now, let's face it, you can't make these guys sympathetic unless you work hard at it. So he's still a man I dominate, but he's not the something at the mouth type.
Not a complete fanatic.
Well, he still believes in the Master's way. The Master uses him as a troubleshooter. Basically, if there's trouble, he goes and he shoots it.
Right.
But he's not unfeeling. In the first story negotiation, saves a woman during a hostage crisis by shielding her from gunfire. The woman isn't that important, but he feels she needed protection. And then the other story, which was evacuation, he's been given a mission to kill a rogue presenter, but also he's got a HPG station full of Blakeists that he was never given orders to evacuate, but he decided that as part of the plan, he would evacuate them. Not because he was ordered to, but because felt they needed to be saved. So he's both a man-eye dominant, but he hasn't lost his humanity.
So is your favorite era to play kind of in Jihad or later periods? Like, what's your favorite area to explore?
Ooh. I like exploring everything.
All right.
Written stories in Successor War, in Redcom War, Clan Invasion, and I did write one in the First Succession Wars, the Rindy Lighthorse anthology that depicted the Rindy Lighthorse wreaking havoc on the planet that killed dependents from 2 of the battalions. I don't know if you ever remember that story.
I do. I read it. Very good. Another good one.
It was like that.
I'm just getting caught up with some of the lore. I've been a slacker for too many years. I was always tabletop play as compared to lore.
Yeah, I'm the lore nut.
Yeah.
Well, you have the Rindy Lighthorse, and they did this anthology, and I did. Story was No Tears, which was basically the 2 battalions going back to the planet that had killed their dependents and wreaking havoc. And I don't know if it was a result of it, but Sendai, the planet that they were on, disappears from the maps about that time.
I never caught that.
Yeah,
I'm going to have to go back and look.
I can't seem to find on later maps.
I'm going to have to look that up now because I never caught that.
And also I did the novella Blood Rage for the Kickstarter, Mercenary Kickstarter. It was another tale of revenge that involved Hansen's Rough Riders and Taurian Concordant. Now, I don't know, it's scattered throughout the Jihad source books. Basically, Hansen's Rough Riders during most of Jihad at war with the Concordant. Basically, said, okay, we're going to make you pay for what you did to our dependents. And they did. They really hammered the Concordant basically by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until
that
was the novella Blood Rage. Well, that's the start of it, I should say.
Okay.
Because it depicts before Jihad got going, Concordant and their protector Shrapling decided to invade the Federated Suns, and they seized several planets. And one of the planets they seized was Brockway, which was where the Rough Riders were based. Now, the Rough Riders weren't on the planet at the time, but the 2nd Touring Lancers came in, and the Rough Riders infantry regiment was left behind to protect the Dependents. Did their best to slow down the Taurans. And Taurans got angry, so they stormed the militia base and they stole all these Rough Rider Dependents dressed in overalls and thought they were soldiers and proceeded to massacre them. Well, you imagine massacring 2,000, 3,000 dependents. And the result was that the Rough Riders found out about it. They headed for Lindsay and proceeded to curb stomp the Pleiades Lancers, who happened to be on planet at the time. I mean, absolutely devastated them. Point where they're no longer part of the TDF. So they're stuck on, so they end up on Middale, and they're stuck there because Duke Hasek knows that if he gives them jump ships, they're going to go into the Concordat and just basically maul anything they come across. But for some reason, 2 battalions of 2nd Taurian Lancers show up to raid Middale. Now imagine that a Rough Rider, the people who murdered your family, are coming to the planet you're on. By the end of the jihad, when they were pulled off the Concordat front, they had destroyed 3 Taurian regiments. They had mauled 2 of the mercenary units that were working with Taurians, and they subverted a 3rd mercenary unit. So basically, by the end of the war, Taurians had lost about maybe a quarter of their military to the Rough Riders.
See, you've been involved in a lot of the pivotal moments in BattleTech history.
I try to be. It's not until I haven't been writing a lot about the named characters you see, that are part of the history, like the Davians and the other big names. It wasn't until I wrote, I think it was 13, in which I actually used one of the big names, and that was Peter Steiner Davian, because that was a story set on ThoughtCat during the opening of the jihad. And that's a story that one of my favorite stories, because it's a little bit supernatural, maybe. And,
In what way?
Well, 13 is Zeus BattleMech. And it's so named because it was supposedly the 13th Zeus off the line ever. 13th one ever built. And has a reputation for being haunted. At the time of the story, it was part of a Baron's collection. The guy collected BattleMechs. But after the word invaded, he basically gave up his collection to the military, and this one man, Argon Sardusky, he's the only one that approaches this mech. And he ends up piloting it. But at some point, he starts seeing the ghost of his sister, dead sister. And he has conversations with her. Now, to be fair, he's just come out of an emotional breakdown with the death of his sister. And this is after he fought for Nordy Steiner at the end of the FedCom war. He had earned the name Wolfsjäger because he was one of the only field commanders that the Wolves couldn't beat. He gained a reputation of being the man. Now, he was the last commander to surrender to Peter Steiner-Davian's forces, and he had a mental breakdown, and so you don't know if he's actually talking to his ghost of his sister or if he's having a mental break somewhere in the line.
Right.
But it doesn't affect his fighting skill.
And there is a sequel and a shrapnel for that too, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, that's Lords of Silence. That's the
Okay,
sequel,
that's fine.
13.
Gotcha. I had to read that then.
Oh.
And
So, what other games do you play other than BattleTech? Are you a big tabletop gamer or more board games? What kind of stuff do you play?
I wish I could be, but right now, BattleTech is it. I mean, I'm involved with the Leviathan Kickstarter.
Okay. Is that for business or pleasure?
Pleasure, hopefully, when they get it done. But I don't play a lot of games. Most of the time I'm writing, or I'm on the internet researching or doing other things.
So one of the questions Bradley had dropped in was, do you take any inspiration from the board game, from past games you've played, or when you play out a session, do you use some of that and kind of say, I need to save this for later?
Will on occasion roll dice to see where the damage is, and if the core is hit, if the mech is hit or misses or stuff like that. I kind of work with that, but it's not detailed. I roll a couple of dice and mainly say if it's 7 or better, he hits. If it's 7 or less, he misses.
Okay.
And then I'll roll for hit location.
So kind of getting back into storytelling and the story writing process. What is your process? Do you have like a storyboard? Do you have like a murder table where you've got everything like drawn out and lines connecting dots, or?
It's just basically me thinking and saying, what if? What? And example, the Lance Killer. It's my first story. Background came from one paragraph in the FedCom war, talking about how both sides were skirmishing in this valley, and basically it was that's all was happening at the time. And then I add in a what if a man gains a reputation of being bad luck because he's the only man that has survived the annihilation of his lance 3 times. Okay. And he's been sole survivor those every time. And he gets assigned to this main character's new lance. And it goes from there. And it's just
kind of a linear process for you? Did you just take that idea and then say, okay, well, this is the next event, this is the next event, this is the next event, and kind of piece it together? Or what was that process for you?
Well, for example, right now I'm working on the first book in the War Reading trilogy. That's a 3-book series. I'm writing the first one. Jason Hansen's writing the second one, and Phil Lee's writing the third one. We're working on them concurrently. Posted that we've done so far on one of the Google's drives, so all three of us can read what the other ones are writing about. So,
Okay.
I've got some hooks into my story that will continue over into Jason's novel, and into Phil's novel.
So does that allow you to do some foreshadowing or anything like that? So if something...
Yeah, foreshadowing allows me to set up, events that are coming that won't be paid off until the second or third book.
Okay. Little callbacks in the middle of the writing.
Yeah.
Introduce a character here, they don't show up again until the second book, something to that effect.
Something to that effect, yes.
Shared universe type deal, right?
Well, we're all sharing the story, and we're being supervised by John, so
Gotcha.
he knows what's going on.
What does that editing process look like? Like, especially in a 3-book collaboration like this. I mean, that's got to be pretty heavy.
Right now, we're still working on the first drafts. I think what will happen is when we get the first drafts done, get together and go through them and decide what to keep, what to get rid of. Now, if I've got this here, how does that affect Jason's story, and how does Jason's affect Phil's, and how does mine affect Phil? We'll go through and basically even things out so we're all on the same page. Because that's the biggest problem when you got people writing a book each in a trilogy. They all have to match.
Right.
Yeah, the shared universe.
Yeah, is that like a team? Like, how many people are doing the editing? Is it like, do you do the editing, or is it?
And we're not to the editing stage yet. We're still working on the first drafts. And once we get together,
I know in this particular case, but like in past stories, like
Bill and John are usually ones that do the editing.
Okay.
But I know Aaron's still trying to find some editors. But that would probably be the biggest drawback right now, is the editing, because we don't have enough editors. And Phil's been the one that just wanted to edit Shadows. And I don't know if he'll be editing the 3 War Reading novels, but he's
if
heavily
anybody's
involved.
listening, polish off your resumes and send it into Catalyst. I like your editing skills.
Yeah. Well, Bill does is take what I write and turn it into English.
I write in sloppy English and bad English, so.
Yeah.
I try to write, and that's a question I have. As a aspiring writer trying to get into shrapnel, any advice or tips, or just keep writing?
First thing you do is you write small. What I mean is you write about small events. Personal events. Part of the urge is to jump right in and start writing about the major characters. To write about, say, Hans Davian or Victor Steiner Davian. Stuff like that. No. Start small. You start with your own characters. You can start with your own mercenary unit, but don't make them like Wolf Dragoon strength. Most mercenary units are maybe a company or two, maybe a battalion if they're lucky. But otherwise, say you write small, you write about maybe a raid here or a part of battle over here that wasn't covered in a source book. And you write using your own characters. Because if you can't show the editor that you can write your own characters, it's not going to help your case any.
Makes sense.
So, like I said, when I say you write small, you write personal stories. You have maybe a dozen characters at most. Have a main character, two important characters, and the rest fill in as needed.
So how do you detail your characters? Like, what kind of information do you put in, like, in notes beside your character name and whatever?
I don't go for looking up characters to determine traits from them. I basically say, okay, got a character, his name is, maybe I'll look up something if it's something cultural. You know, say the planet's got a lot of, there's a large population of Cambodians, for example. So I'll go look up a couple Cambodian names. So I can give you flavor without going into real detail.
Do you do anything with like motivations or any kind of personality traits, like they've got a twitch or anything in that nature?
Yeah, well, a lot depends on what the character's supposed to do. If the character's a veteran, he might have a few scars, be a bit gruff. Might be in a father role.
Any psychological scars?
If the story calls for it.
Okay.
Read 13.
13, he's got psychological scars on a scale most characters don't. Let's see, going through.
Yeah, that's some of the stuff I enjoy. I play a lot of role-playing games, so coming up with different aspects of what the character is supposed to act like, personality traits, motivations, background, even plot hooks, things that happen behind the scenes that might be going on. Yeah.
Basically what I need for the story.
Yep.
And for example, Brewer is a manipulator, so he has to manipulate. But by giving him this background, it softened him to a certain degree. So
right.
He's not as black as he has been in other novels. Oh, he's still dark gray, but he's not as one-dimensional.
Right. So what's your favorite part about writing? Yeah.
It's getting words down on the paper. It's actually putting together the situation. A lot of times, like the War of Regan novel like that, I'll have maybe one sentence that describes the purpose of the chapter. And then it's up to me to take that sentence and turn it into a chapter.
Is that kind of your storyboard process then? Is like you have your,
Yeah. Generally have an idea of where I'm going. And I'll have scenes in mind. Don't have all the details worked out until I actually put it down on paper.
Right, so kind of a stream of consciousness when you're start with the framework and then build it as it comes.
I know where the scene is going. I just don't know what route I'm taking to get there. Not until I actually put the words down on paper.
So sidetrack here. Besides the Urban Mech, which obviously you love from writing the Suburban Mech thing, what is your favorite mech?
Always kind of like the Victor.
Why is that?
Well, it's got big. It's got a big gun.
The visual appeal?
I have a variant that I like to use once in a while. Takes the AC-20, replaces it with an AC-10, and 2 tons of ammo instead of 3, and throw in a couple of tons of armor, and I think it's a better mech.
Yeah. So, if you had an opportunity to join a game, and we've got the group in Sarasota, would you be up for like a Central Florida versus South Florida meetup? That's something that might be in your future.
Well, you can arrange it with some Florida guys. I do know there are BattleTech players down Fort Myers.
Yeah, I'm sure we could make a trip down there. We've got quite a group.
Yeah.
Ronald's down. You're in Sarasota, right?
Brighton, Sarasota area.
Yeah, I'm in Port Charlotte.
Yep.
Yeah, you're not too far from that.
We can make a trip.
Yeah,
we'll travel.
There's a good group down in St. Petersburg, the Critical Hit crew. We almost always get together over there, and then we're looking to travel a little bit. So what does your future look like? Are you writing more books? What kind of things are coming down the pipes for you?
Well, I'm going to promote a book I wrote a couple of years ago. It's a nonfiction book called The Russian-Ukraine War Fact Book that I wrote like 2 years ago, and unfortunately sunk into obscurity. I don't know. You remember GW books back when Desert Shield, Desert Storm were in the headlines?
Yeah, I had one of the GW Desert Storm breakdowns that went into a lot of detail about various actions.
Well, these were designed for the war gamer, so they could war game different scenarios based off of Desert Storm, Desert Shield. Well, the guy I've done work for, Jamie Reif, he decided that they were going to put out a source book covering the first phase of the Russian-Ukraine war. So I wrote it. We got a whole bunch of photos in it, and we also did a rundown of the different equipment that was being used at the time, and wrote the first phase from the time the Russians invaded until they got pushed back from everywhere else.
Yeah, they were getting close to hitting Kyiv. They had their convoy. If their convoy hadn't gotten stuck, they might have actually taken Kyiv.
Yeah, well, the problem is that the Russians were prepared for a 3 to 5 day war, and not a multi-week war.
Right.
Second of all, they forgot that Ukrainians weren't pacifists. They were not going to roll over and play dead just because Russia said so. This type of situation, if you were born before Ukraine became independent, you remember what it was like being under Russian yoke. And if you were born after that, you don't remember being under the Russian yoke. So they fought hard.
Yeah.
And they have been absolutely innovators when it comes to warfare.
So how might that the seeing the recent conflict, how does that affect your writing and what you might put into paper for BattleTech?
Well, you now have to account for drones
Right.
on a larger scale. I mean, both the Russians and the Ukrainians are using drones in numbers that were only lightly touched in the Nagorno-Karabakh war. Which,
Yeah, that's something I threw into the campaign guide just recently. I'm about to publish the latest one that I threw together. But that was one of the things that really hit me watching the war also, is the drone use. So we're running close to an hour. Kind of want to wrap up a couple more questions, but what I want to ask you is there anything that you would like to answer, or what question might you would like to have had from either this podcast or any other podcast?
I'm trying to think of something that hasn't been asked yet.
I mean, if not, that's great, because that means we've asked all the questions.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, well, I can't think of anything because I don't sit here thinking about questions like that. So.
All right. Just wanted to open the floor for you if you had anything. So,
I have
any final? Yeah, go ahead, Jose.
I have something. Whether you know it or not, you have two massive Kurita fans talking to you today. The first faction I ever played in BattleTech was Kurita, because everybody else was putting FedCom or Federated Suns, so I had to be different. So I chose Kurita. And Randall also has a pretty strong Kurita unit as well.
Yep, gotta follow Bushido.
So as soon as you just said that it was going to be based in Luthien, you got two sales right there.
Okay.
Instant sales. Instant sales.
We'll say this, there are connections to a couple of other stories.
Oh, I agree. I love it. I love it.
Shadow Dragon. There was a BattleCore story called A Matter of Honor, which is about a young man who's adopted into a samurai family and ends up growing up and becoming the head of the family and fighting another family member for the right to be the head of the family. And then leads to the South Korea force manual is coming out. The supplement that brings up 3150. I have a short story there that has the great-grandson of that same warrior going through his early career, and that warrior is in the shadow of the dragon.
Ooh.
He is Yuri's senior military aide.
Okay, I think I know who it is. I'm not going to spoil it.
But it's the great-grandson of the man who was in A Matter of Honor. So there's that line running through it. That's the continuity running through it. I like doing things like that, running continuity. In the Elements of Treason and Honor, Regis' aide is the grandson of Ansgar Shiraz from 13 and Wars of Silence. In fact, he's still piloting 13. That's his mech.
Oh, I gotta look at that too now. Really? Oh my gosh. All these,
The lore fandom comes out. Oh, there it is.
all these little Easter eggs I've missed. Now I gotta read them all again and catch them up. That's awesome.
So I love doing things like that. Also started laying down groundwork for in Vengeance Games. There's a Reed and Mallory who's kind of like the sponsor of the main character in order to get him to fight. He is related to the main character in Three White Roses. This is about Alexander getting free of Barney's hold on him. Because the idea was, even though Barney had the prince, he also had to deal with the prince's bodyguard, or loyal to the prince and not to Barney. And that's the story of how Alexander escaped Barney's hold. That was in Shrapnel.
Yeah, Shrapnel 12.
Yeah, but the two Mallorys are related. Basically, it's how, because I've chosen the planet Antietam in Federated Suns, decide that the Mallorys are the ruling noble family.
That's pretty cool. I like that.
And basically, it's how Cadman Mallory, who's the prince's chief bodyguard, his family ends up being given the Dukeship of Antietam because of his actions in the Indian Civil War. Reed and Mallory's a member of the royal family. You know, he's just a baron. Also in Vengeance Games also included a character from the technology story, which was Snake Dance, I think he called it. One of the members of that Lance that was involved in that story also makes an appearance in Vengeance Games. And the main character is the son of the main character from Snake Dance. So I love making those type of connections to show the continuity. That's not just some random people who are in one story and that's it. You never hear or see the family again. But it's wonderful dropping in these little, dropping in these descendants to let the reader know that there is continuity, that these people do marry, they do have children. Those children are going on to do other things.
That's cool. So, any final thoughts? Any final questions? I think we're running late on time, so let's. I definitely want to be respectful of your time, also.
No. I mean, I'm on Facebook. I'm on the forums, the BattleTech forums. On BattleTech forums, I'm Turbo Turtle. I'm in several Discord groups, including.
Do you have a main way of contacting you if somebody wanted to follow you on Facebook or one of your social media groups?
Facebook, so Turbo Turtle on X. Don't use
Turbo
that.
Turtle.
Yeah. TRBOTURTLE. There's no U because
I can send all that information to you guys. I got it.
Okay.
All right.
That sounds good.
when I had my first email, the one I still have, is an AOL account.
So do
And
I.
I've had that since the beginning.
It still works.
And
Yeah, they still work.
Oh, wow.
yeah,
You still have to use a dial-up modem. That's the question.
Yeah,
no,
you don't have to. But I play it in my head.
but my email box is so damn full, it isn't funny.
Yeah, I understand that part.
But
I definitely understand that part.
But when I originally set it up, there wasn't enough letters for for the full court turbo, so I dropped the U, so it became TRO.
Gotcha.
BLE.
Almost like turtle. Like it's
Yeah.
a southerner saying terrible. The terrible turtle.
Purple turtle.
Yeah.
I worked some years as a pizza delivery guy. Back
so
up in
did I.
America. Yeah, well, I worked for several different companies. And the last one, my boss was a nice guy. And to motivate me, he began calling me Turbo Turtle. Because while I wasn't the quickest guy, I was the most reliable guy.
Yeah. That's good. That's a good one.
That's funny. All right, guys. Well, I definitely appreciate your time, Craig.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, really appreciate you coming on to our little-known podcast, and hopefully this will be mutually beneficial for all of us.
Yeah. I got a feeling when our listeners listen to him speak and hear all his stories, they're going to start all of a sudden wanting to go back and pick up every single book that he's mentioned and just read them.
I know I am.
Same here. You know, I also read that. Yeah, I have read some of your stories, and I just can't remember the names now. But I remembered some of the stories you just spoke about during this, and the entire time it was going on, I wanted to interrupt. I say, yeah, I remember this, but I let everybody else do that.
Yeah, well, I have close to 40 short stories now. Hopefully I'll put out Vengeance Game in its own separate novella. I think it's novella. So, we'll see. It's just a matter of them having the people to do things. I keep joking to Randall that we need to clone him because he's doing the work of 2 or 3 people, and we keep adding people to the cloning list.
Well, you know, I already have his name, so I mean, if you need another Randall, yeah.
It's just people don't understand that Catalyst is still a small company. It's mostly a core, maybe a dozen, maybe a little bit more of full-time employees, and the rest of us, like me and most of the writers and the artists and everybody else, we're freelancers.
Right.
We
No, that makes sense.
do we do the work as needed, and they handle the business side of things. Basically what it boils down to. I am looking forward to the Kickstarter that should be coming out soon.
Yeah.
I think we all are.
Yeah.
Got to get that plastic crack.
Yep.
Used to be metal.
Those minis. Yeah.
Wonder if it-
I'm so glad.
Metal
I'm so glad they're plastic now.
Metal still tastes better though.
It says
Well, I'm kind of happy that they're using Cookbook, which was the Crack Canopy edition.
Yes.
I love that because
You started off the crack canopy.
it was
You did?
that's a homage to the Cobalt Coil.
Right.
Place.
I liked it a
And-
lot.
And it's wonderful being able to do, because that was one of the best things about the BattleTech technology was Cobalt. Yeah, Cobalt Coil stories from BattleTechnology.
Yeah.
And being able to do that again is just, I just like stuff like that.
Yeah. That was my first shrapnel entry which was rejected. I tried to do it for the crack canopy. I'm still trying. Gonna keep trying.
Well, like I said, you have to write small
Yep.
and write it in such a way that you don't inadvertently kill someone who's still alive.
Gotcha, yeah. That ripple effect
it-
didn't stay in the timeline.
I think that's the biggest problem a lot of early writers have, is they want to write the big stories right off the bat,
Yeah.
and it's not going to happen.
Well, I didn't use any main characters. I stayed away from them, but we'll see. We'll keep trying.
Yeah. Same.
You have to show that you can write stories that don't need the big characters.
Right. That's the big thing, too.
All right, guys, let's wrap this up. So,
All right, well, let's get the name of the book again. It's coming out soon again, real fast, and the date.
Shadow of the Dragon.
Shadow of the Dragon, July 15th, correct?
That's what I've been told.
Be looking forward to it.
looking
Same
forward to it.
here.
I always like to see another Karita story.
No,
All right, guys.
we don't need another Karita story.
Yes, we do.
No, we
Yes, we
don't.
do. Yes, we do. Enough of the clan stuff. Let's get back to Karita.
Hey, I'm getting my war readings. I'm looking forward to that. So
Yeah,
that
same
sounds like
here,
the
same
intent.
here.
Hopefully,
Yeah,
we'll get some more
gotta get
jihad
that.
stories too.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for everybody, and we will catch you on the next one.
Right. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Craig.
Good night, guys.